Welcome to a brand new video series called The Retro Vault, where we'll be looking at and diving into stories from games of old. PS1, PS2, Xbox, PS3, 360 era titles. In episode 1 we'll be going back to the Xbox 360 era. This was the era of so many great horror titles. Dead Space, Alan Wake, Alone in the Dark, Fear, well, the second one, Alien Isolation, and of course, the awesome Evil Within. In this episode we'll be looking at the story behind another of these epic titles, Condemned Criminal Origins. This game easily held its own against the earlier mentioned titles. Developed by this very same studio that created the Fear series of games, Condemned Criminal Origins was a slow burn at first, but my word, this game was creepy in places. Due to it being developed in this era of video games, the first-person melee combat was clunky, but in my opinion this did add to the charm of the game. There was a sequel to this game, but we'll be looking at Criminal Origins in this video, with the second game being covered in a separate one. Anyway, that's enough of an intro. Quick disclaimer that despite this being a 17-year-old game, you may want to play this for yourself, so there will be spoilers in this video. That being said, let's jump in. Metro City 2005. FBI Special Agent Ethan Thomas is working for the FBI's Serial Crimes Unit. He has the highest cracked case rate in his department, but a lot of his latest cases have gone completely cold. He thinks that this may be due to a rise in assaults amongst homeless in the city. He arrives at the abandoned Wiseman office building with two Metro City detectives, Dickinson and Becker. Inside, they find the body of a woman who appears to have been murdered via strangling. Ethan carries out some crime scene forensic work using various gadgets and deduces that this murder is the work of someone the FBI are familiar with. The killer is known as the Matchmaker, a serial killer that poses his victims alongside male mannequins, which are all marked on the face in a specific way. One of the detectives indicate that they can smell cigarette smoke, so they deduce that their suspect may be very close by, and they all split up to try and find them. Ethan, during his journey through the derelict office building, is attacked by crazed individuals and attempts to fix a power box, but is electric shocked. He drops his weapon and it's grabbed by someone who walks off. Ethan gives chase and eventually corners the mysterious man in a small room.
How does it feel to be on this end of the gun? But listen, you bastard. Don't mess this up for us. We are both on the same path of righteousness.
Thomas!
And the path takes strange turns.
Police! Drop the weapon now!
Be ready for death, Agent Thomas. It shall come visiting again.
Ethan wakes back up in his apartment after a horrific nightmare. A man is there with him. It's one of his father's friends, a man named Malcolm Van Horn. Malcolm informs Ethan that he's wanted for the shooting and murder of Detective Dickinson and Detective Becker, since it was Ethan's weapon that was used to kill them, and the police are on their way to arrest him. Ethan leaves his apartment via the fire escape with the help of Malcolm, who tells Ethan to meet him at the metro station later on. He makes his way into a very dark train tunnel. He finds a set of photographs in a bin, which show that someone has been observing and surveilling him. He speaks to his contact back at the FBI forensic lab, a Lieutenant Rosa, who thankfully is still loyal to him, and she tells him that the photo was taken from inside the metro station, which overlooks Ethan's apartment. Ethan submits a sample of a liquid smudge from the photos to his contact, and it turns out that the smudge is from some photo developer fluid, and they deduce that the photos were not only taken from the metro station, but that they were developed there too. Attacked by more violent thugs, Ethan receives a call from Malcolm, who says that the police truly believe that Ethan killed their colleagues. Malcolm says it's up to Ethan to prove his innocence, and says that Ethan has some sort of gift and that he needs to trust and rely on his instincts. Another call from Van Horn reveals this.
Thomas speaking.
Ethan, it's Van Horn.
How do you know this number anyway?
I know many things about you, Ethan. Since your father's death, I've watched you, hoping that you would find your potential.
My potential?
Yes, you've become an excellent investigator. Not through training or luck, but instinctually. However, you'll find that you are capable of seeing so much more.
Again with the instincts.
They're a gift from, well, perhaps not from God. Remember, they can help you and others. Again, I must go. Be careful.
Ethan arrives at the main part of the metro station. He has to deal with yet more mindless brutes, but nonetheless he picks up the trail featuring the developer fluid. Ethan uses his instinct that Van Horn was alluding to, and it helps lead him to the room where the photos were developed. His instinct indicates that many photos have been developed in this room. He finds the photo negatives along with the camera setup, looking directly into his apartment. A tape recorder is set up, looping and playing back a call featuring Ethan's voice in regard to an unsolved case. A handprint from the machine reveals nothing, no records of it on any database. In the next room, Ethan discovers that whoever this person is that has been taking pictures of him is very interested in serial killer cases. More specifically, cases investigated by Ethan himself. He finds 18 newspaper clippings, some of which have markings on them. Exiting the room, Ethan has a hallucination and throws up. He then sees the suspect from the Wiseman offices. Giving chase, Ethan has another hallucination and sees loads of birds smashing through a window and falling to the ground. He is now in the subway. He almost reaches the suspect, but he closes the metal grate, forcing Ethan to try and find another way around. He eventually sees the suspect on a subway train and boards it. The suspect smashes through the door with the use of a fire extinguisher, and Ethan is thrown from the back of the train onto the tracks. Ethan needs to make his way to the nearest platform, and he thinks the suspect will have gotten off there. He travels through the tunnels and encounters emaciated squatters living in there, all of them hostile towards him. He arrives and searches the train car for DNA and discovers another handprint, this time on the fire extinguisher. Whilst waiting for the results from the scan, Ethan sees the suspect flee again, followed by a fight between some hostiles on the platform. Ethan discovers that the suspect has changed out of the orange maintenance jumpsuit and into some clothes from a locker. After sending Lieutenant Rosa an image of a nearby map marked by the suspect, she tells Ethan that the map features train times for a service to a small farm town an hour west of the city called Briar. They deduce that the suspect travels between both locations with some regularity. Ethan thinks that although this suspect may be the matchmaker, something still isn't adding up. He needs to find out more. He tracks the suspect through the dark, damp tunnels and finds a blueprint for the subway car, and after sending a photo of it to Lieutenant Rosa, it seems that the car has got a compartment on the ceiling. Since they seal the compartment shut when the train cars get decommissioned, there may be something of note inside it. Opening the compartment, a load of mannequin parts fall out of it. On one of the mannequin parts is the word Bart's, and this gives them a clue. Bart's department store, which has been out of business for 14 years and that is now occupied by squatters. Located in the Burnside district, it's so rough that not even the police go down there unless absolutely necessary. They imagine that a serial killer who poses as victims alongside mannequins would need a good supply of mannequin parts, so an old department store would be ideal. Ethan heads there next. Whilst on the subway train heading to the Burnside district, Ethan speaks to his superior, who tells him to turn himself in. He protests his innocence and tells his boss that it could have been the matchmaker, but it makes no difference. He's still a wanted man. He has more weird experiences and hallucinations. Anyway, he arrives and the department store is in a sorry state. He has to fight with enemies disguised as mannequins, but he eventually finds a handprint. Upon scanning it though, Lieutenant Rosa tells him that it's different to the one found on the recorder in the metro station. It's also missing the index finger from the right hand. Ethan's instinct leads him to a blood splatter on the wall, which Lieutenant Rosa assumes is from blunt force to the head. Ethan needs to find the body. He finds a trail indicating a body being dragged somewhere, and the trail leads him to an elevator. His instincts tell him that the body was thrown down the shaft. Rosa tells Ethan that because it's a fairly recently deceased body, it's likely already releasing methane. It's been dragged down into a flooded part of the department store. Ethan eventually tracks the body to a small dressing room, and through looking at the body, it's revealed that the body is indeed the owner of the handprint on the desk. He's been posed alongside a female mannequin, and his face has been marked with the same markings as the mannequin in the office building. The exact opposite of the matchmaker's MO, in which he poses female victims alongside male mannequins. This deceased person here is the matchmaker himself. Case closed, I guess. And then a handprint on the victim's neck reveals that the person who killed this man was wearing gloves with traces of pesticide on them. Ethan hears a police officer who is looking for him, but the officer is killed by a vagrant. The police have arrived at the department store and Ethan needs to leave, but before he does, he receives an important call from Lieutenant Rosa.
I think I've got something, Thomas. The newspaper clippings you found in the room at the metro station, each of the articles talks about a serial killer that was on your case list. 9 names were mentioned. Of those, 7 of the 9 were crossed out in each of the clippings by a black felt tip marker. The only names that weren't crossed out were the matchmaker and the torturer. Of the names that were crossed out, all those cases have gone cold.
And now you can cross off the matchmaker. Wait, are you implying that there's someone stalking serial killers? So what, he goes around killing killers and then he marks off their name in his little personal diary?
It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?
It does, but it adds up. It almost makes sense. Hold on. Ah, shit. Rosa, I have to call you back.
Having escaped from the department store, Ethan and Lieutenant Rosa discuss whether the suspect he's been after is in fact the serial killer known as the Torturer. They agree that what this suspect has been doing isn't in line with the MO of the Torturer, so they decide that he must be someone else. Their suspect is going around killing serial killers in the same way that they kill their victims. They give him a name, Serial Killer X, a person not on Ethan's case list. Ethan realizes that he now needs to save the Torturer so that the Serial Killer X doesn't kill him. Lieutenant Rosa has something she needs to show Ethan, so he sets off to meet her at the city library. The police are now actively searching for Ethan, so he tries his best to avoid them by jumping into a dumpster as cover. The dumpster rolls down the slope and crashes, but Ethan enters a doorway to evade the police. Rosa, winning the Best Timing Award, calls Ethan and he nearly gets caught. She's at the library and states that she feels that she's not alone there. Ethan arrives and goes to the library. It was the site of a recent fire, so it's been closed to the public. Ethan descends to the basement and meets with Lieutenant Rosa, who explains that more squatters and addicts inhabit the library and that they are definitely going to be hostile towards them. Lieutenant Rosa shows Ethan a redacted file, which potentially gives an insight into Ethan's abilities. He has an abnormally high bone density and a hyperactive serotonergic system in the brain, which basically means that Ethan displays the characteristics of psychedelic intoxication, almost like having a bad trip, which explains his instincts and that he can see certain visions. Lastly, it seems that there is a chest x-ray and something in his throat has been redacted. Along with that redaction, the notation "See Subject PR56", with the term PR56 being an addendum to a personal record. Not only that, but this redaction is classified as black, which is top-level security. It seems the US government is especially interested in Ethan. Ethan has another vision, seeing the same creepy figure from his hallucination on the train. This seems to be a man with metal implants in his mouth. Ethan and Rosa need to find a working terminal in the library in order to find a link to the Torturer, but they can't find anything. After suffering more hallucinations, they're now getting more frequent, they find the terminal, but Ethan sees a vision of Lieutenant Rosa being taken. This appears to be accurate, as Serial Killer X has indeed taken Lieutenant Rosa, and he calls Ethan, taunting him. But Rosa seems to hit him, and he hangs up. After fighting through various addicts and vagrants and submitting more samples back to the lab, Ethan manages to find Rosa. She tells Ethan that Serial Killer X tried to kill her, but she bit him on the hand. Looking at the samples Ethan submitted, confirmed that Serial Killer X is indeed the man from the metro station. So Rosa states that he wanted to know everything she knew about the Torturer and made her look it up. Serial Killer X now knows a fair bit about him, his MO, everything. Serial Killer X is, as their suspicions confirmed, going after the Torturer next. Then Rosa shows Ethan a news report.
This is Jennifer Alden reporting from police headquarters. Developments in the case of the Torturer serial killer. A retired gym teacher from the city's juvenile rehabilitation program has informed police of contact he had almost 8 years ago with a troubled youth named Carl Anderson, who reported fantasies that match the torturer's methods exactly. Authorities are now asking the public to inform police if they know of Carl Anderson's whereabouts. Do not approach the suspect, as he should be considered armed and dangerous. Sources within the police department are telling me they are also concerned because their informant can no longer be located. Department spokespersons have refused comment on this latest development. This is Jennifer Alden reporting for News Channel 5.
Carl Anderson. A gym teacher tells the cops on you, and now the teacher can't be found. Okay, Rosa, we have to find the school where this teacher worked.
They need to find the school where the teacher works, so after journeying through the library's burnt section and avoiding more creepy, ghoulish individuals, they get to the library, school, and city district records. They find a location of the school, which is St. Joseph's School for the Severely Troubled, which has been closed for 5 years, but they have an eavesdropper. It's Serial Killer X, and he knows where to go next. Ethan heads there in an attempt to get to the teacher first, with Rosa going back to the lab. Ethan is surprised by Malcolm whilst trying to break into the school. He is interested in the progress of Ethan's investigation. Ethan is suspicious of how Malcolm has been able to find him, but nonetheless continues on and breaks into the school. It seems that the place isn't at all abandoned. There is also blood everywhere, indicating that someone has been having a lot of fun here. Ethan spots a huge lunch lady who appears to have a small gang of crawlers under her command. Ethan finds remnants of someone's lips attached to a blackboard underneath the words, "Loose lips sink ships." Rosa has found that the teacher they are looking for is the gym teacher, a man named Samuel Tibbets. What's more is the lips appear to belong to him. Ethan enters into a meat freezer and has to kill the huge lunch lady. He uses a cleaver to obtain a fire axe and smashes through a door into the school's gymnasium. He lowers a couple of basketball hoops. One has a severed arm on it, and scanning it reveals that the arm belongs to Samuel Tibbets, the teacher that they are looking for. Ethan goes outside into the school playground and finds a dead FBI agent on the ground. It's a hallucination of himself, dead. He's contacted by Malcolm Van Horn again, who tells him to meet him outside the front of the school when he's finished there.
Thomas speaking.
Thomas, I just wanted to make sure you met me out front when we were done. I didn't want to interfere with the investigation,
But the line starts to go funny, and Ethan once again is tormented by hallucinations featuring the same man with the metal implants. A short time later, Ethan's instincts kick in again and he has a vision of Tibbets, now obviously missing an arm, showing him taking refuge inside a locker. Ethan enters the shower room and finds the body of the teacher inside a locker.
Help me.
Help is on the way. Who did this to you?
Carl Anderson.
The torturer. Okay, take it easy. Do you know where he is now?
Other man came to Carl away. Left me here to die.
The teacher eventually passes away, and Rosa tells Ethan that the pesticide sample they found on the matchmaker's neck originates from a pesticide used for agricultural crops. That particular pesticide is unique and can be tracked to a brand named Applewell. Before leaving the school, Ethan vomits and has a vision of the creepy metal man again, but he comes to his senses and gets a call from Rosa.
We got it. There are no currently licensed fruit orchards in the town or the surrounding countryside of Briar. But there was one once. Appleseed Orchard, just outside of Briar on Route 4. In business for 40 years, but closed its doors just 10 years ago after a tremendous outbreak of apple maggots. The orchard never recovered. Curious, though, county deeds show it's owned by an out-of-state real estate firm.
Ethan then leaves and meets up with Malcolm Van Horn outside the school. Malcolm drives Ethan to the orchard, and on the way they have a little chat.
So why are you in on this?
I have a sense of responsibility. I needed to help.
Help? You mean with my investigation?
Yes, among other things.
There was a time I thought I was the best investigator the Bureau ever had. Now it seems they were interested in me for other reasons.
What do you mean?
I saw my file. Apparently I'm some sort of circus freak to them.
That may not be helpful. I wonder how much they know of what is happening. I would stay away from the Bureau as long as I could.
It's not like I have much choice, since they still think I killed those two officers.
Their deaths were unfortunate, but maybe it's best this way.
Best? You seem to know a lot more about what's happening than you're letting on.
This is Appleseed Orchard Estate. Stay on your toes. I'll drop you off at the house and head over to the barn. I'll meet up with you later.
Ethan enters into the house and is attacked by a weirdo who is dual-wielding sticks, and he looks strangely familiar. He finds a series of 4 quotes dotted about, leading to a clue which, in itself, leads him to a secret area in the basement. He finds a notebook which has a lot of information about Ethan. Serial Killer X has been following Ethan for a long time. Ethan then hears a commotion coming from upstairs. He goes upstairs to check it out and the torturer is dead. He, checked himself out. Ethan, whilst listening to Serial Killer X taunt Carl, who he doesn't know is actually dead yet, changes it into Carl's clothes. He watches the reflection of the TV and waits until Serial Killer X is close and then attacks. Ethan then chases Serial Killer X through the house, and after a brief fight, Serial Killer X defeats Ethan. Ethan comes to and hears Malcolm address the killer not only as Leland, but as his nephew, Leland Van Horn. Malcolm says that Leland is not himself or in his right mind. Ethan passes out again and wakes up tied up. Leland taunts Ethan and tells him that he's killed all the serial killers that Ethan was after, and that he's going to kill him too. Ethan notices another strange-looking man in the rafters of the barn, and Leland cuts Ethan's finger off. Malcolm comes to Ethan's aid, wrestles his nephew to the ground, and tells Ethan that the strange figure he saw is the source of the madness and that he needs to kill it. He runs after the man and fights deformed individuals along the way, but after a long battle through the orchards, Ethan confronts the monstrous man in the barn. This individual appears to have metal implants which need to be removed in order to weaken him. After removing the implant from the man's jaw, he finally dies in a gas explosion. After this, Malcolm finds Ethan outside the barn and drives him back to the city.
I can never go back, can I?
No, not to the Bureau, not to your old life. Thomas, you have looked into the face of hate, the visage of evil. Know that hate is in your soul, too. It is, sadly, everywhere. Mastering one's fear and controlling one's hatred is perhaps the most difficult thing one can do.
Well, at least it's over. It's dead, and the killings will stop. Stop the car. The trunk.
Thomas, don't!
Ethan has a choice here, to kill Leland or to let him live, mercy or revenge. But it doesn't make a single difference to the ending, as Leland dies regardless. Shortly afterwards, Ethan meets with Lieutenant Rosa at a diner. He's been cleared of the murders of the two officers, but is suspended anyway. He tells her that he doesn't know who to trust in the Bureau anymore. Lieutenant Rosa tells Ethan that a cult seems to be behind everything, and she asks where Leland Van Horn is.
A cult? The man responsible was Leland Van Horn.
Yes, I know. He manipulated both you and us, but where is he? We have no Leland Van Horn in custody.
Look, I explained all of this in my deposition to the Bureau.
But a lot of unanswered questions remain, Thomas, which brings me to why I'm here. Maybe we could make better sense of all this if a few more were found, but under the circumstances, you did well. Anyway, the results suggest a group may be behind all this, and lots of other criminal activity around the city. Do you know anything about this? Who these people are? Are you affiliated with them in any way?
Rosa, can I trust you?
Of course you can trust me, Thomas. We've been through a lot together.
Look, I have no idea what any of it means. Something weird, something unexplainable happened during my investigation, but truthfully, the questions you ask, I can't answer. I'm sorry, Rosa.
I'm sorry too, Thomas. I really am. Take care of yourself.
So that's the end of the game. It appears that there's a lot more to discuss. As I said, we'll look at the story behind why all this happened, where the madness came from, who the strange man was, why Ethan had hallucinations, and why all the birds were dying. It is indeed a cult, but this cult is explored in more detail in Condemned 2, Bloodshot. I've recently bought a PS3 copy of that game, so that video will be coming at some point, so please keep an eye out for that one. If you did enjoy this video, then please leave a like on it and subscribe if you aren't already. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, but for now, take care and I will see you in the next one.